What's up, everybody? My name's Big Cam and welcome back to another Comically Boston breakdown episode. And today I already did my episode 1 breakdown of Wonder Man, and I was seeing if people wanted to do, one at a time or a week at a time, and it seems like everybody just kind of did a full season breakdown. So I'm gonna do, episode 2 to episode 8 and talk about the season as a whole. And if you want to hear me talk more in depth about episode 1, there's a breakdown on the channel for that already. But episode 2 was titled Self-Tape, and of course that's with them trying to self-tape for an audition role, which seems like a miserable process for actors. But the little synopsis for the episode on Disney Plus said, "It's never been this hard to do a self-tape before." And coming off of last episode, it seems Trevor has been playing Simon this whole time, and the man on the phone confirmed Simon already has his powers. But will they both get cast in this Wonder Man remake? Their auditions in episode 1 seem to be pretty good. But if you were wondering from episode 1, like, man, how did Trevor get from Shang-Chi to playing Simon in Hollywood? Well, episode 2 opens on Trevor on a plane talking to an elderly woman and saying she loves Joey Pants and that they used to be in a show together called South Shore Hospital or something like that. But Joey Pants, Joe Pantoliano, first mention of him in this episode. I believe he comes back multiple times this season, but love Joe Pantoliano. But Trevor, when he arrives back in Hollywood and he lands, he's walking to the airport talking to this woman. He's like, "I'm going to do it for my mother. I'm going to become a Hollywood star again, and I'm going to be an actor just like she always wanted me to do." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sure you'll make your mother proud." And as she says this, Trevor gets tackled by the FBI and DODC members for the Mandarin stuff from his past and getting broken out of prison, which we saw in the All Hail the King short that Marvel put out years ago before Shang-Chi, making it so Trevor could be in Shang-Chi as the Mandarin, but really Trevor Slattery, because we find out that Shang-Chi's father, Wen Wu, is the real Mandarin. But so DODC agent Cleary arrests Trevor, and he's like, "Why are we going through this again? I had my trial, I went to jail." But the DODC agent's like, "But you didn't finish your sentence, so you have one of two options. Either work with me or you're going back to jail." And Trevor just doesn't want to go back to jail, so he's like, "I'll do whatever you need." And that's how he ends up working against Simon for the DODC. But how does the DODC know Simon has powers, and where did Simon get his powers? But we cut over to Simon working out in his apartment when he gets a call from his agent Janelle, and she's pissed when he went to the audition for Wonder Man and she didn't get it for him. And she's like, "Why am I getting a call about you being in an audition for Wonder Man?" He's like, I'm sorry, but she loved me, right?" And she's like, "She said you showed promise." And the casting agent, though, wants him to put together a self-tape for another project, and that's why this episode is titled Self-Tape. But Simon is struggling with the self-tapes by himself, and it's such a process because he's got to record the lines that somebody would be saying opposite to him because he's all alone, and then he's got to listen to the recording of him saying the other lines while he tries to act the lines that he's supposed to read. And I was like, oh god, this is a tough scene, tough look, and I'm like trying to think of all the actors in the world that are probably doing this and struggling, and I'm like, oh man, this goes a long way if you have a good helper with you, somebody that can read against you. Oh. And we see for Simon that he used to have help making these self-tapes, and he finds an old video on his phone with his ex, Vivian, helping him do a self-tape, and it seems like they actually used to work really well together. But Simon kind of throws his phone because he's like, I shouldn't be looking at this, and reminiscing, and she dumped me by leaving. And Simon starts to get angry, and everything in his apartment starts to shake, and his eyes start to glow red. And then he releases like this EMP energy blast, and it like sets off car alarms around his apartment building and shakes all the wind chimes. So it affects things, but it didn't destroy the building. So I think like Simon can control the effectiveness of his EMP blast. He can make it wipe out everything, or he can just kind of make it blow something back, you know what I mean? So then after he lets out this little EMP blast at his apartment, we cut over to Agent Cleary asking Trevor if he saw any visual enhancements on Simon, like was he glowing maybe? And Agent Cleary needs to get Trevor to get proof that Simon is dangerous so he can put him away in this high-tech prison that his boss wants to fill. You know, so it's not even necessarily that Simon did anything wrong, it's that they need to fill this high-tech prison. But so Cleary's a dirtbag, and he's just watching powered individuals and just waiting for them to slip up. Like, what is his deal, and why has he got such a beef against enhanced people? But Simon texts Trevor to help him out with the self-tape, so he goes over and they go to a self-tape studio, but the woman there is terrible, so they leave, and they go to Trevor's place in LA that he bought from the South Shore Hospital money, but the neighbor is playing loud music, so this doesn't work out either. And they have to go to one of Trevor's friend's house from back in the day, and they go to Joe Pant's house, and Joe Pantoliano, and his mansion is wild, and there's marble everywhere, and he's got dumb money. He's like, yeah, I got into real estate back in the day, before Arnold Schwarzenegger, and just made a ridiculous amount of money. Just dumb money. Like, opens up a window so that his tree inside his house can get light. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy's got crazy money. But Joey Pants tells us Trevor was on crazy drugs back in the day, and that's why he ended up getting the role over Trevor. And he says Trevor couldn't handle the lead role, so Joey Pants is kind of an asshole in this little meeting. But Simon then tells Joey Pants off for being condescending to Trevor, so they leave and go back to where they started it all in this episode. They go back to Simon's apartment to shoot the self-tape, and Trevor and Simon nail the self-tape, and Trevor's like, you should send that, you'd be crazy not to send it. And Simon goes pee, and Trevor puts the ring that was on his finger, and it's like, oh yeah, he did have a ring on his finger, but Trevor's not married, so he takes the ring off, puts it on the laptop, and it starts like hacking Trevor's computer for the DODC agent Cleary. And then Trevor kind of turns around and sees this sheet on the wall, and he's like, everything I've seen from Simon, he doesn't seem dangerous, but then he sees this sheet on the wall and the couch covered in a tarp, and he's like, what's the deal with that? And he goes over and moves the sheet, and he sees a giant crack in the wall from this EMP that Simon released earlier. So it doesn't look like a nice crack. It looks like a dark magic crack. Like, it's very curious, because even in this whole series, like, we see some of Simon's powers, but we don't necessarily find out where he got them and like what they are. You know what I mean? Like, very interesting, this character, and I really hope they end up doing a season 2. But Trevor sees this huge crack in the wall that from what Simon did earlier, and kind of just Simon's in the other room yelling, hey man, you want to order a pizza? And he's like, splendid. And then Simon comes around the corner and sees Trevor looking at the crack in the wall, and he's like, how am I going to explain this? And Trevor turns around and just goes, pepperoni. Yeah, sounds great. And just kind of ignores this and just like, alright, let's go back to being buddies. Nothing going on that wall. And that's credits on episode 2. So I was like, interesting. So that like one little contained episode didn't necessarily, like, I thought episode 1 would have worked better week to week. This one I would have still been here to be like, ooh, what's gonna happen next? But after episode 2, I was very much so was like, alright, click on episode 3, let's keep it rolling, So I can see why they dropped this in a binge, but maybe they should have done it more like the Ironheart route and do like 3 episodes and 3 episodes for the 6-episode season. So maybe they could have done like the first 4 and the last 4 and split it up that way, but it is what it is. Heading into episode 3, titled Pacomia, which is where Simon's mother lives, and the synopsis for this title episode on Disney Plus said, birthday parties are kind of stressful. But, coming off of last episode, we found out Trevor is working for the DODC agent Cleary to stay out of prison, and Trevor and Simon went on a miserable journey to get a self-tape together, and they tell off Joe Pantoliano before going back to Simon's place to shoot the self-tape, and Trevor hacks Simon's laptop for Agent Cleary and finds the giant crack in the wall that Simon did with his powers. But we open this episode with young Simon at a doctor's office, and there was a house fire, and she's like, what kind of boy doesn't, know how to use a stove? And he's like 13 or something. So maybe this is more like the mutants, and he became like a teenager, and he's coming into his own as like a man, and his powers start to reveal themselves. So maybe this is more of like a mutant, X-Men type of show, more than I even expected. But at the doctor's office, it seems that Simon is completely healthy, and his clothes have a little bit of burn marks on him, but he himself has no burns, and he's perfectly fine. His lungs aren't like filled with smoke, and there's not a mark on him. So the doctor's like confused, but she's like, yeah, I think you should be all right. Yeah, you'll be fine. And maybe even the doctor kind of knows that there's something different about this child, but she's not about to rat him out in front of his mother. So she's like, yeah, you'll be all right, kid. Just, be careful around stoves, But we cut to the present day, and the DODC wants to protect the nation from dangerous superpowered individuals, and they're like secretaries giving a speech in front of the group of agents, including Agent Cleary, and they are going to have budget cuts because their new high-tech prison is only half full. And their high-tech DODC prison is in the middle of nowhere. And I'm not sure if we've actually seen this location once before or not. But DODC agent Cleary makes Trevor wear a wire to Simon's mom's birthday party. And, so now Trevor's got to find a way to get himself into this party. And, he's wearing a wire, and he's like, Cleary's really pressuring him now to get information about Simon, because now Agent Cleary's boss is pressuring them to get whatever they're working on. It better be good, and it better be worth it, or you're going to get fired type of thing. So Agent Cleary is now going to be right up Trevor's butt trying to get stuff on Simon, to save his job. And then we see Trevor works out with Simon to, hey, can I tag along to the mom's birthday party? And he's like, sure, it'd be nice to have a buffer. So Trevor, it goes with him, and he's trying to do what Agent Cleary told him to do and get people talking about the fire, and other guests start to arrive, and Trevor's trying to get stories out of them in the guests, but nobody really knows anything about Simon. So Simon, it seems, has kept a real low profile his whole life, trying to make sure that nobody finds out about his powers. But it does seem his mom and maybe brother know about his powers from this fire incident from when he was a kid. And then his brother, Eric, I believe, in the comics, I believe this character becomes the Grim Reaper, but nothing that shows that, just a normal guy in this series. But he comes out and he says something that Simon's father used to say, and he brings out a pot of chicken and he goes, ooh, that chicken tastes like it was born to be in that sauce, and I was like, I'm gonna start using that one. If chicken tastes that good and saucy, we got some chicken wings maybe for this weekend. I'm hyped. But it seems like after the party they're chatting more, and Simon, they're chatting, and his brother seems to look at Simon and just know something's wrong, and he's like, tell us about American Horror Story, Simon. And so their brother gets out of Simon that he was fired from American Horror Story, and he starts to give Simon shit, and Simon starts to get hot at his brother, and you see his eyes start to glow, and his mom had been praising his brother's work on this new kitchen. He gave me an island. I always wanted an island. Oh, it's a beautiful kitchen. And Simon, I think mistakenly, but just in his anger, destroys his mother's island in her new kitchen that she loved so much, and everything goes everywhere, and it's like, oh shit. And Trevor then, they're leaving, and Trevor feels bad for Simon, and he really does want to be his friend, and he's like, screw Agent Cleary, so he crushes the bug, and he breaks the recording device and throws it away, and he walks back to the car, and Janelle has called Simon, and they both, Simon and Trevor, have gotten callbacks for Wonder Man, and that's credits on episode 3. I was like, oh man, so is Trevor really a good friend to him? Is he working for the DODC agent? Clearly he is, but he doesn't want to be, so it's very interesting so far. But then they kind of take a break for a moment, and they have this buffer episode of episode 4 called Doorman, which explains the doorman clause that Simon signed in episode 1 at the audition. And it explained, even when they said it in episode 1, I was like, the doorman clause, why is that even a thing? You know, like, what is that? So we find out more of what that doorman clause is with episode 4 titled Doorman. And the synopsis for this episode said, ding dong. And if you know, you know. And this episode is about Damar Doorman Davis. And we open in black and white with Damar Doorman Davis, and he's been a doorman for 3 years at this club, and Josh Gad, friggin' Olaf, shows up. But at the end of the night, he was taking out the trash of this place, and he stumbles across a Roxxon dumpster. And if you guys don't know Roxxon, that's like Roxxon Corporation. They're always up to no good. And it seems like there's some mysterious sludge leaking out of this trash, you know, dumpster, and he puts his hand in it, and it seems like he gets sucked into this sludge, and he's like brought to another dimension with doors, and all of a sudden he's then back at his house, and he's got somehow there, and he accidentally teleports his dog. When his dog runs over to him, he touches him, and he accidentally goes downstairs into a woman's apartment. He runs down there, she's getting out of the shower, so this already looks bad. He's like, whoa, my bad, I'm just trying to get my dog, and then he runs up out of there like, what the hell just happened to me? But I thought this was going to be worse. I was like, oh my god, he's going to get arrested for breaking into this woman's apartment, and he really just wants his dog. Then how can they explain the dog got in there? I don't know. But Damar goes to work the next day, and the mysterious Roxxon dumpster is gone, and he's shook. He's like, what the fuck? But he goes to work anyways, and then there's a Josh Gad singing in the club, and he's doing like a remix of like Olaf, and he's like, you know, just partying it up at the club. And it's all in black and white, but it's still like a moody episode, but it's still one of the best episodes of the season. And it was just like a filler episode, but it was so unnecessarily good, and I can't explain why I loved it so much. But as Josh Gad is singing in the club, there's a fire breakout, and they're all running and they're pushing against the door, and it's a pull door, so they can't get out, and friggin' Damar Doorman Davis is trying to save everybody's life by, you know, pushing the door, and he accidentally uses his powers to fall through the door, and then he's like, I don't know what's going on, y'all, but I think you should step through me. And there's a woman, she's like, he wants us inside him? Yeah. You know, like, they're all grossed out. But Josh Gad's like, nah, listen to him. Step through him. And he steps through him, and he's like, what? Wow, this is weird, this is weird. Oh, wow, there's a door on the other side. This works. And then he like pokes his head back through. He's like, guys, everyone go through Damar. So Damar saves everybody from this fire at this club by letting everybody pass through his chest like a doorway. And this character of Damar Doorman Davis, his power of like the doors and like where he got brought to in this weird door dimension, kind of reminds me of like Spot from Spider-Man, no? From, yeah, Across the Spider-Verse, the animated one. So after Damar saves everybody's life, Josh Gad walks over to him. He's like, dude, you're a hero. And he hires him to be his doorman. He's like, yeah, $200K a year, fucking come work with me. And he's like, sure, I'll do it. Makes a lot more money than he would as a doorman. So he ends up being Josh Gad's doorman and helps him sneak out of places and avoiding paparazzi. And Josh Gad has the genius idea of then putting him into their bank heist movie, and he blows up, and he's like a big star now from freaking walking in and say, we're gonna rob this bank through me. Ding dong, you know, because he's the doorman. Ding dong, that's his catchphrase. But so he gets put in this movie, and some people are here for it, some people aren't. And it seems like Damar is just getting used, and he's getting himself heavy into the booze, and he starts drinking to kind of be like, all right, some people hate me, so now I gotta drown my feelings, and I feel them, but he's behind on payments, and he's filming Cash Grab 2, and Josh Gad, he's like, let's do it again, round 2, baby. And he's like, oh man, I really need this money, let's do it. And because he's been such a drinker, he's like, you know, struggling to do the scene. And Josh Gad's like, you know, throwing money bags through him, and as he's throwing the bags through him, he starts to get queasy, and he's like, oh god. And then as Josh Gad goes through him, he throws up at the same time because he's feeling sick, and I don't know why, but because he threw up at the same time Josh Gad was going through him, Josh Gad disappears. So in the MCU, Josh Gad is missing. friggin' Disney's Olaf is just fully missing in Damar's stomach somewhere in a door dimension. And I don't know where he is, but Gad disappears and no one knows where he is, and now it's all of Hollywood has the doorman clause because they're trying to avoid more superpowered accidents or incidents. And Simon is watching this all on his phone get reported by Mario Lopez. And he sees all this and he's on set somewhere and they're like, hey man, you good? And he's like, yeah. And then he just kind of walks off and that's credits on episode 4. And I was like, God damn, wait, what happened to Josh Gad? Where is he? You know, like, but that just, they did a whole episode that they didn't necessarily need to do, but it was really good. Just explaining what the doorman clause is and why people in Hollywood maybe don't want people with superpowers in their movies, you know, because it could cause accidents or problems. But it seems Doorman Davis gets arrested by the DODC. But I thought it was hilarious that I was thinking about it for like the last couple of days. Josh Gad gets fucking disappeared, and then Josh Gad posts on his Instagram, spoilers, Josh Gad will return in Avengers Doomsday. Wait, so Doorman Davis and Josh Gad and Simon and Trevor are all gonna return in Avengers Doomsday? Or is this just a joke? I don't know, but Josh Gad will return in Avengers Doomsday. Oh, that's fucking hilarious. I hope it's real. I hope he actually does return and we somehow get like the pocket universe. He comes out of Doorman Davis or something and he's like, I've been in there for years, what the fuck? But that then brings us into episode 5 titled Found Footage, and this one's called Try a Peach Ring, you'll understand. I don't remember that from the episode, but Simon and Trevor are out getting food with some guys that Trevor owes money to drugs from back in the day, and they want to kill Trevor, and Simon has to step in and use his powers to take out some of these guys, and some kid on a scooter sees all this happen, so they gotta chase him down. They're chasing him down, and they're like seeing him on the curb riding away, and they're like chasing him in New York traffic or LA traffic, which is even worse. And even though LA is more spread out, somehow traffic in LA is worse. That doesn't make any sense. But he's got like a camera mounted to his helmet, so he saw all this. So they need to get the footage so it doesn't get out, so Simon gets fired. So as they're hunting down this kid, Simon's manager, Janelle, sends them over the sides for the callback for Wonder Man, and Trevor's reading them, and Simon's like, come on man, Trevor, you should be looking out for this guy. And Trevor's like, oh no, it seems Barnaby betrays Wonder Man, and he freaking pulls over the side of the road so quick, he's like, wait, let me see that, oh man, you know, and they're like reading the sides, and then they look up, and the kid that they're chasing is right there, and it's like, oh, it seems like he wants us to follow him. And then this kid brings them into some club in a public place where they can't hurt him, and he is hustling them for the footage back, and Simon's now got to help this kid, and he's like, what do you want? And he's like, I need help with this getting this motorcycle back from this guy. And he's like, alright, whatever, we'll go do it. So everything goes to shit at that guy's house once they get there, and cops are called. The guys that Simon knocked out trying to help Trevor, that want money from Trevor, those guys come to the house and follow them as well. So they're on the inside, they're on the outside, they're holding that poor kid hostage, the kid on the scooter, holding him hostage by gunpoint, telling Trevor to get outside. Trevor's like, kill him, I don't know him. And he's like, he has the footage, give us the GoPro. So the kid slides the GoPro through the slot, they delete the footage, so that footage of Simon won't get leaked out, which is good. But this scene at this house is wild, and in the middle of all of it, Janelle calls, and she's like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, I'm trying to get out of there. And they're like, the callback got moved up. It's right now. Get over to Von Kovac's house. He's like, what? And then a shootout breaks out in front of this guy's house, and they run for the car, and then accidentally Trevor jumps to the driver's seat. Simon's now in the passenger seat, and he's like, just drive. And they peel out around the corner, and credits roll on episode 5 as the boys safely got the footage back and deleted it, and now are on their way to their callback at Von Kovac's house. Which then brings us into episode 6, titled Callback, in which synopsis for this episode on Disney Plus says, it is tight, Jake. Which is, I think, something Von Kovac says to one of the other actors, because once they get there, there's more people than just Simon and Trevor there, which makes them even more nervous. But we open this episode seeing how Trevor was desperate for a gig and how he ended up auditioning to be the Mandarin, and you'll never see me coming, you know, and then that's how he ended up getting his role. But cut back to the present day, and Trevor and Simon are on their way to Von Kovac's house, and Trevor believes everything's going to work out. And Simon's so nervous, he's not keeping it together at all, and he goes, no shoes, and Trevor keeps his shoes on, because they get to the front door, and there's one pair of shoes. He's like, oh no. He goes, if this is a no shoe household, there'll be a line of shoes. And he goes, if there is shoes household, there'll be no shoes. One pair of shoes. What does that mean? This is a test. And Trevor's like, it means somebody forgot their shoes, mate. Come on. So Simon's like, this is a test. So he wears no shoes. Trevor wears his shoes, and they go in. All the other audition candidates are there as well, and all the other final callback type people, and he's now nervous. He's the only one not wearing shoes. But Trevor's loose and relaxed, and he's like, come on, just be loose, relaxed. And Simon's like, come on, you know I can't do either of those things. But Von Kovac invited all of the callbacks over at once to step inside his mind and starts to explain the movie to them. And he plays Midnight Special by Creedence Clearwater Revival and says this song will start the picture. We're in space. And then he has some of the other candidates audition work with the other couples and switch up some of the groups. Even though Simon wants to be with Trevor, he ends up with somebody else, and Trevor's like, just go with it, we'll be fine. And it's funny because Simon hasn't slept now in like multiple days trying to help Trevor out, and at this interview, you know, like it's going well but it's also not, and he's like, you know, dozes off at one point, and Von Kovac walks over like, are we boring you? And like in his dream that he wakes up from, he punched one of the candidates through the head and dust comes flying out the back, and everyone's like, oh my god. But it was all in his head, it was all a dream, and it's like, oh shit. And he's like, I need a minute. He goes outside, Trevor kind of grabs him, recollects his thoughts and shit. They go back in, they give like this audition, and then Von Kovac gives Trevor and Simon the jobs as Wonder Man and Barnaby. And Simon couldn't be more happy as they get the roles, and Von Kovac says, we will discuss more soon, and they both head home for some rest, and Simon drops off Trevor, and he's like, I'll see you tomorrow for whatever Von Kovac has for us in the future. And as soon as Simon drops off Trevor, Trevor gets picked up by Agent Cleary in the DODC immediately, and Trevor tries to buy some more time, and he's like, wait, I have him right where I want him, I can get you what you want to know. And credits roll in episode 6. So then you're like, is Trevor really gonna rat out Simon, or is he the guy that snapped the wire and he's not going to rat out Simon, you know? So it's like playing this weird game. Is he really his friend, or is he this bad guy that's working against Simon for the DODC? You know, who is he really with? Is he with Simon, or is he with the DODC? Or is he just Trevor and he's stuck in the middle? But that then brings us into episode 7, titled Kathy Friedman. And this synopsis for this episode on Disney Plus says, the New York Times finds us fascinating, which is something Trevor says in this episode. But we open this episode with Simon, a young Simon, and his father letting him cut school for the day, and he takes him to see Wonder Man at the matinee showing that we saw at the beginning of this series and in the trailers. And I like that they kept coming back to these flashbacks, some as Simon as a young kid and getting to see his father, that they do say he died at some point. So like his father is one of the only people that ever really believed in him, and he's like, I know kids have been mean to you at school and it's been a hard time, but he knows he is different, right? So this is maybe his father saying that he knows he has powers, but so his father's like, sometimes different can be great, you know? And then they sit there and they watch the screening of Wonder Man as we cut over to the present day, and Simon is in his trailer as Wonder Man, about to start filming Wonder Man, and he's on set, and he's now the #1 on set. So he gets a golf cart, and he has somebody working for him going to get smoothies and shit, and Simon's trying on different pairs of red glasses, trying to find the right ones, and Simon and Trevor are making a great team together on set as he's trying on different costumes, and they're like trying to figure out the script and figure out the movie, and you know, Simon's having a tough time relaying his thoughts to the writer and the director, and with Trevor there to kind of rework his sentences for him. Trevor knows exactly what Simon needs, so they're working together quite well. And in this episode, I was like, oh God, I love Trevor and Simon so much. I would have really loved to seen the Wonder Man movie with the two of them in it, which is some spoilers, but we'll get to it. But Simon and Trevor leave the set and they go to a press team meeting with Janelle and Simon's team, which he always was like, what's the team say? And he's like, team? It's just Janelle. You ain't got no team. You was a small actor. So now he's a big actor and he's the lead man in Wonder Man. So now he's got a whole press team. And they're like, oh wow, we're going to capitalize on this momentum. We got a Netflix series for you could do. And Simon's like, what do you think, Trevor? And he's only listening to Trevor and not listening to any of them. And Trevor's like, oh, screw them. Wait till the movie comes out and then you're a household name. He goes, so what you should do, go back to theater, do a play. And you know, they're like, come on, man, we want to make a bag. And he's like, nah, let's go do a play. Let's do what Trevor says. And Janelle then brings up, all right, fine, you don't want to listen to us? Then I got an interview for y'all with the New York Times writer, Friedman. And they're like, oh, good, New York fucking Times. New York Times finds us fascinating, you know, and he cheers friggin' Simon. He's like, ooh, New York Times, we're going to be big thing in the paper. And Simon is worried about Kathy because what if she finds out about his powers and exposes him, and he's like, she can't be that bad. And he's like, bro, she's like a character assassin. She's not for the people, she's against them. She crushed Gordon-Levitt for some pigeon bullshit. And he's like, what? You know, like, and it's crazy because the whole episode, Simon is like so worried about Kathy finding him out, and he's like calling his mom, making sure she didn't say anything, and like goes to see his ex and is like, did you say anything to Kathy Friedman? Like, what'd you say? And his girlfriend's like, listen, I know about your powers. I wouldn't have said that to her. So his ex has his back, but he never told his ex that he had powers. And she was like, we were together for a long time. I loved you, but you never opened up to me, and like, you could have told me. So, you know, this goes to show that Simon has always been playing it very close to the vest, even with his girlfriend, you know, somebody that he has sex with. He's like, hey, I'm not a superpowered individual. I don't know what you mean. So he's been really, you know, that's why he's so quiet and private, because he doesn't want anybody to know his powers and expose him and get arrested for it, you know? Like, it's not necessarily a good thing to be superpowered in this world, you know? So think about how many people are like Simon out there that have powers and are just kind of being awkward, shy little kids, just containing it and not showing the world their true capabilities, you know? Not everybody is Iron Man or Captain America, right? Like, not everybody's going to be praised. But so Simon goes to the meeting with Kathy Friedman, and he's all worried that she's about to expose him. And she's like, oh God, you talked to my brother? What'd he say? And she's like, lovely things, but we'll come back to that. What I'm really worried about is Trevor. You got arrested when you got back here in LA, did you not? And he's like, no. So the whole time, it's kind of playing like she's going to find out Simon and expose his powers. But really, she's found out Trevor, and she's like, you got arrested. You should be still in prison. But I'm curious, how are you sitting here today on a film set? Did you make a deal with the government? And Trevor's like, no, I didn't make a deal. I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, well, how are you sitting here? You should be in jail finishing your sentence. So why are you here? So now Simon's like, why is he here? What's going on? What? Something feels off here. What's wrong? And Trevor's like, oh no, you're not going to Joseph Gordon-Levitt with me. I've had just about enough of Kathy bloody frickin' Friedman. And Trevor storms out. And then Simon goes to their trailer and questions Trevor. And he's like, hey man, what's the deal? What's going on here? Why are you not sitting in jail? And Trevor comes clean to him. And Simon puts it all together, and he's really hurt. And he's like, so, Midnight Cowboy, the audition, my mom's birthday, you've been playing me this whole time? And Simon's really hurt by this, and he like kind of storms out, but not in an angry way, like in a very sad way. But then we see that, like, you know, he gets angry because he's like, my only friend would do that to me? That's fucking crazy. And Simon gets really angry and walks into the Wonder Man set on stage 10 and starts, you know, his powers start to get a hold of him because of how angry he is. And he releases another one of those giant EMP blasts, but this time destroys everything on set and nearly takes off the building. Freaking shakes the dust out of everything in the building. And that's kind of where credits roll in episode 7, because all that happens really is like the explosion goes off, and then Kathy Friedman turns around and like looks and goes, oh God, what's that explosion over there? Ooh, something crazy going on. And it's like interesting heading into the finale. We haven't seen much of the Wonder Man movie, and we haven't really seen much of Simon's powers. We know that like he can EMP blast a little bit, but we really haven't seen that. Other than that, we've seen his eyes glow a little bit and maybe some of his hands glow. And so we know really nothing about his powers, where he got them, what he can do with them. All we know is that he just blew up the Wonder Man set as we head into the finale, episode 8, titled Yucca Valley. And it says, the synopsis for the final episode says, "Don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys." Which is probably good advice. But we open this episode with another flashback with young Simon and his father just walking out of the Wonder Man screening that they just saw. And they're talking about it over burgers. And he's like, "Wow, that was really good." And his father says, "I always wanted a pair of those sunglasses that he had. Oh, so sick." And they are really cool sunglasses. And he says, "I can't wait to see you up there one day." And Simon's like, What do you mean?" He goes, you are very talented, Simon. I remember you in your school play. You can do it. You got what it takes. Just you have to work very hard to do it." So you see why Simon always wanted to be Wonder Man and wanted to be an actor, because it's what his dad believed he could do, you know? And man, there's nothing more powerful than a dad believing in his son, you know? And like, actually makes me tear up, because like I've lost my father and I never really had that relationship with him. I always had the opposite. Everything I tried to do and everything I believed I could do, my father told me I couldn't, and that I sucked and I was terrible. You know what I mean? Like, so when I see positive relationships with fathers and stuff, it's like, it's heartbreaking. You know, it's touching. But cut to the present day, and the DODC is springing into action because they're like, "Oh my god, there's an explosion on the Wonder Man set." And Simon is in his car punching the steering wheel, heading back to his house like, "Fuck, I guess I'm gonna get caught now." And he's watching the news, and there's now a statewide manhunt for whoever did this. And it looks like the DODC is coming to arrest Simon, but Trevor makes it look like it was all his fault, and he has recorded another Mandarin video to cover for Simon. And he calls Simon, he's like, "You do the movie, son. You don't fucking... This has been my mistake the whole time, and I don't want to live my life in mistakes anymore. You are a true friend, and I love you." You know, and like, fucking him and Trevor. So you knew the whole time that Trevor was Simon's friend, and that they were really boys, and that DODC agent Cleary was just making him do shit he didn't want to do. So Trevor covers for Simon, takes the blame for everything with the Mandarin video, saying, "The explosion on the Wonder Man set, I did that." You know, like, and we see they knock on Trevor's door, and Trevor gets arrested again as the Mandarin. Agent Cleary kind of grabs him and goes, "I know you're covering for Simon." And Trevor's like, "Slattery was the cover. I've always been playing you, and I've always been the Mandarin, and you never saw me coming." Like, as he looks into Agent Cleary's eyes. So Trevor's off to prison and still holding that it was him, and he's not ratting on Simon, and he will not be giving them any more information on Simon because he's the Mandarin. But there's a knock at Simon's door, and he's like, "Oh shit." And like, this whole time you're like thinking they're on their way to Simon's house, but no, they arrest Trevor, and then Simon's sitting there like, "Oh shit, I guess I'm not going to jail. What now?" Opens the door, and it's his assistant from set, and he's like, "Hey, so Von Kovac says he never misses a day of shooting, so he's inviting you to set." So he goes back to set, and he shows up, and the prop guy gets Simon the real original Wonder Man glasses from the real original film, and he puts them on, and we get to see the Wonder Man super suit for the first time, and our boy looks nice. Oh, I really loved the way that the suit looked. And like, it's simple, but it's the red glasses with the red W on the chest, and like, give me Hot Toys. Give me the Wonder Man figure, please. 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 I mean, you probably already have a Yaya head sculpt from doing Black Manta, right? No? Wonder Man shouldn't be too hard, and it looks like it's just like a top, so the figure would have some decent mobility too, and it's sleeveless, so like, I don't know, man. Give me some Wonder Man. Oh, I would love that. But we then see Simon film a take as Wonder Man, and he crushes it, filming across from a tennis ball, which is just gotta be so hard. Like, all you do in your life as an actor, you're like, great, I'm gonna work with these other great actors, and then you're working against a tennis ball, and it's like, great. Awesome. But I think they're working against a tennis ball because now they're going to have to reshoot all of Barnaby's scenes with a new recasted actor. And we cut from the scene of Simon shooting with the tennis ball to up on the big screen in the premiere in the theater. And Trevor was recast, we see, by Joey Pants, Joe Pantoliano, which is just like, But Simon's mom is sitting next to him and crying, and she's so proud, and his brother's a couple seats down, and he's tearing up, and Von Kovac and Simon are like, I don't do sequels ever, but maybe we should talk about it. So they go, yeah, maybe we should. So maybe there's going to be a Wonder Man sequel film, and then we can get a season 2. I would totally be here for it after these 8 episodes. And we still have a little bit to go to finish out this 8 episodes. So they, to me, really satisfyingly ended this season as well. And they could have ended it just here. Like, hey, I made the movie, yay! But no. We're going to go check on our boy Trevor. But outside of the premiere, Janelle's like, ooh, you look good, boy. And he's got this red suit on with the red glasses. And he looks good. And he's now a big-time star. And Janelle's like, trying to get Joey Pants as her client, and Joey Pants is like, maybe we'll talk, And then Simon's brother comes up to him and wishes his dad could have been here to see this, and his brother says he's proud of him, and they have like a bro moment. And after his brother was like, man, you'll never make it as an actor, now to see a brother really proud of you, and his brother's kind of like his father figure now, like, but maybe his bad brother might become the Grim Reaper one day, so who knows. But so out front of the premiere for Wonder Man, Simon asks Janelle any news on Trevor, and she says, no, nothing. And he's in a black box in a place you don't come back from. And Janelle says, Trevor was right about one thing though, waiting until afterwards. Now you have the pick of the litter, whatever you want to do. What project do you want to do next? And Simon kind of smiles, and we cut to Simon staying with some guy in the middle of nowhere named Chuck, and he's working on a character for a movie, so he's got to stay with this guy to prepare for the role, and the guy buys into it. So he's like working at this prison, and we see that this is the same prison where Trevor is being held, in this fancy high-tech prison in the middle of nowhere. So Simon, finally staying with this guy, gets into the prison with him, posing as a guard, and Agent Cleary, as they're walking in, Agent Cleary's on the back of a golf cart, and he kind of is like, what? Who was that? Was that Simon Williams? But then the guy next to him starts talking to him, so he's like, forget it. What? So it's funny, that Agent Cleary, he's pretty good, if anything, I see him becoming a big figure in the DODC and hunting down mutants or other superpowered individuals. And that guy who plays Agent Cleary is a real prick, but he plays it well. But we then see Agent Cleary telling the secretary of the DODC that he ran some tests on the Wonder Man site of the explosion. It says everything on the site was affected on an ionic level, and says if Simon can harness ionic energy, then Simon Williams is an extraordinarily dangerous threat or asset. Ooh, so he's going to be a threat to the DODC, or he could work for us if we play the cards right. And we see Simon uses his powers to fry the security cameras, and we cut to Chuck gets a call from his wife, and she's like, hey man, a lot of money just got put in our bank account from an anonymous person. So if anybody felt bad that Simon was using Chuck to break friggin' Trevor out of prison, he got some money out of it, so Chuck made out, he's good. But Simon makes his way over to Trevor in his prison cell and busts him out, rips off the door with his powers, and then we hear all the guards coming, and it's like, oh my god, how are they going to get bust out of here? This is crazy. And Simon steps in and grabs Trevor and looks up at the ceiling and he starts to use his powers, and it looks like he uses his ionic energy, whatever powers, and he circles it around them into a ball, and then uses this energy to fly through the ceiling, leaving rubble in this huge crack in the ceiling as Agent Cleary runs up and sees the hole in the ceiling, like, what the fuck is this? And that's where credits roll on season 1 of Wonder Man, and credits roll on episode 8 with Trevor and Simon flying away off to God knows where they're going. And I have some theories, and I was like, I think there's plenty of room for a season 2 because we have not nearly explored Simon's powers enough and how he got them. What are they? All we really know is that his eyes glow purple sometimes, his fingers can glow, and he can fry security cameras, release EMP blasts that sometimes crack walls or sometimes destroy studios. And now we know he can fly, and he can fly holding somebody that's not superpowered. So him and Trevor fly off possibly to be seen again in Avengers Doomsday, although highly doubtful. Maybe Avengers Secret Wars. But where could they possibly be going? Because now Trevor's going to be a fugitive of the DODC. They probably will highly suspect that it's Simon that broke him out. But it's very interesting that they're going to have this, like, where'd they go? And they could have a season 2, maybe a Wonder Man 2 with Von Kovacs and bring all them back. Or, you know, maybe if they just show up in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars, like I was saying, maybe Simon's more of a mutant and he'll come out as a mutant, and maybe he'll be with the X-Men in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars. Or maybe Kamala Khan, she's also kind of a mutant, right? So, I don't know, he is on the West Coast. We last heard that she was on the West Coast and she was looking for, like, Kate Bishop, right? So, I don't know, maybe he'll be with, like, the young Avengers, even though he's not that young. But maybe he'll be, instead of the young Avengers, it will be the West Coast Avengers. I don't know. But I did write as a joke that wherever they fly off to hide out, they're going to that hut that Bruce Banner built on the beach in She-Hulk. That little hut they're going to drink on the beach and just hide out for a while. But no, I was also thinking, you know, other possible locations where they could be going. Trevor could probably go, hey, I know a place we could go that's up in Magical Place that they probably couldn't find. So maybe he goes and finds Morris the chicken pig and they get through that forest, that magical forest, and they get to Talo again. Who knows? You know, I could see him fitting in over there. But I'm thinking maybe they should go to, like, this universe's version of, like, Westchester, and they go to the X-Mansion, and he's like, listen, I got powers, I don't know what to do with him, he's a fugitive, can we hide out, can you guys protect us? And I think maybe they might help him, you know, or, I don't know. But I think what's probably more likely is that he won't show up in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars, and he'll probably just show up in a Wonder Man Season 2 if this show does well. And from what I've seen this week, I don't think people watched individual episodes, but the binge watch, it did seem like people were kind of here for this, and they were entertained by Trevor and Simon, and I do think Yaya Abdul Mateem II and Sir Ben Kingsley absolutely crushed it, and you could tell by, like, episode 7 and 8 that the pair of them together, they were having a lot of fun together. They enjoyed the roles, they enjoy being Simon Williams, they enjoy being Trevor Slattery. So if you have actors that are having fun, they enjoy being there, let them have more fun together. You know, give us fucking 5 seasons of Wonder Man. I would be here for it. Although I hope if you guys do it again in the future, let Wonder Man be a week-to-week spectacle. Stop with the binge dropping. You know, it's fun. It's not that fun for people like me. You know, where you have to watch all this, do a big long video. Like, this video is probably going to be almost an hour long. Like, you guys probably won't want to watch that, and the video probably won't do well. But for me, at least, I talked about Wonder Man, got my thoughts out there, said what I saw in these episodes, and that's all I really do this for anyways. As much as I make the videos to entertain y'all, I really do it for my own mental health, so I don't have to talk my roommate's ear off or call my mother and be like, blah, 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 you know. And she's like, whoa, that was a lot of information. And I'm like, yeah, my bad. But yeah, I thought the show was really good, and I liked the Hollywood, you know, aspects of it. You know, Joe Pantoliano, Josh Gad, you know, Kathy Friedman, and like doing weird nods to American Horror Story and bringing up Twilight and Sons of Anarchy and all these like actual real things in Hollywood, but then still being a Marvel show and like being real and Von Kovacs and having fake characters, but still being really cool, interesting story, and very different. Nothing like Marvel has put out before, and I think it is highly entertaining. Is it their best show they've put out? Probably not, but it is very, very entertaining in a way that I was not expecting, you know? And shout out to Mar Doorman Davis. I hope he comes back, and I hope Agent Cleary is the scumbag of all scumbags for the DODC for projects to come in the future, which I'm sure he will be. He's now showing up in what? Spider-Man No Way Home, Miss Marvel, and Wonder Man. So He's been in more TV shows than movies now, but he has bridged the gap from movies to shows, so maybe we can get the shows back into the movies, and we'll get Simon, Wonder Man, and Trevor into Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars. I wouldn't be mad. Just 2 more guys, why not? Throw them in there. But that's it from me, y'all. Thank you guys so much. If you made it this far into the video and you would like to send your Wonder Man Season 1 thoughts to me, drop them down in that comment section, or you can send them to my other social medias. Links for those down in the description below. Thank you guys so much, and if you made it this far into the video and you would like to support the channel, the best way of doing that is dropping a like on this video, commenting down below, subscribing if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you don't miss future Marvel content and Wonder Man content, and you'll get the notifications when those come out. Once again, my name's Big Cam. Thank you, beautiful people, so much. It means the world to me that you made it this far, and I can't wait to talk more Wonder Man with y'all and see what comes next. But I will see you, beautiful people, in the next video. Peace.